Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to G Bear's Off-Grid Ways, a homestead in the desert. And here we are in the shop today. We got another windy day. I'm telling you, I've seen more windy days this year than non-windy days. And that's not exaggerating. It's the absolute truth. It's just windy, windy, windy. The winds have been in the 26 mile an hour range today, so they haven't reached the 30 like they have been, but still, it's just too windy to do anything outside. And the temperatures are still a little on the chilly side, especially in the morning. But anyway, let's get to the electrical here. I did promise that I would talk to you about a breaker panel. Now, this breaker panel is set up for 4 breakers. You can only have 4 breakers like this. These are single pole breakers. Or you could have 2 of those single poles and 1 of the double pole 240 volt. Okay, so this one would be 120, this one would be 240 because it's 2 breakers, and this one is 1 breaker. All right. So, easy stuff about these. Don't get scared and say, oh, I'm going to shut this off. I don't want to know anything about that. It's really easy. This is real simple stuff. And once you understand it, you don't get afraid of it anymore. So anyway, you're going to have incoming wires, and which they would normally come off of, for your off-grid, they would come off of your inverter. And I showed you that I have a 120-240 split pure sine inverter from Ames. So I showed you on there that it had red wires, black wire, and white wire. Okay, and I said red wire and black wire are both hot, and then the white wire is neutral. And green wires are always, or bare wires, they don't have any insulation at all, would be ground wire. So here's how simple this is. Okay, you got 2 lugs right here. Okay, 2 incoming lugs. One of those connects to this bus bar and this bus bar. The other one connects to this bus bar and this bus bar. Remember I told you every other one on the left, one on the right? This one only has breakers on one side, but it would be the same thing if it had breakers opposing. So if this had another set like this over here, you would have 1 lug on this side and 1 lug on this side. And these would be opposing. Okay, one up, 1 down, 1 up, 1 down, 1 up, 1 down. All right? So, your 2 hots coming in, whether it be 2 hot blacks or 1 red and 1 black. One would go into here, and the other one would go into here. Line 1, line 2. Okay? Now that sets up your hot wires. Now, you see you got this little setup over here and another one that looks like it over here. What's that all about? All right, if it's fastened to the panel itself, to the metal panel, it's a ground bar. So that would be where your bare or your green wire would go. All right. If it's got a plastic insulation behind it, that's where your white wires would go. Okay, so your incoming white wire would go into one of these 2 big lugs right there. And then all the individual circuits that you have, your neutral wires would go here, your ground wires would go there, and the hot wire goes here in the breaker. So how simple is this? Okay, well, you want to put a breaker in. You see this side's got a hook on it, and this side's got a slot. So you hook the hook over this little tab right there. Oh, I gotta go to the next one. Let me get that in there. hook it over the tab, and put it down, and then push it till it snaps. That's it. It's in. Okay, now when you put that on that way, the breaker is on, and if you had your wires in here, everything would be powered up for that circuit. Pop it off, and that's it. While I'm at it, note that if you do pop a breaker, normally it ends up like in the middle or not quite all the way to one side or the other. So when you want to reset it, you always have to shut it off all the way like that, and then turn it back on. Okay, if you don't do that, you're probably not going to reset the breaker, and you're going to say, well, how come I can't get power back? All right, so now here I have one that goes to one lug. You see it's got the tall back, and this one's got the bus bar underneath. So that would be for a 240. Here's the 240. There's the hooks. They go on the two tabs. Put it down onto the two little bars there and press down until it's in place. There we go. Okay, and same thing. Turn the breaker on, shut the breaker off. Okay, so now this one would have two hot wires coming out of it because it's 240, 120, 120. All right, very simple. So let's pop that out. Pop that out. Okay, now for wiring your cabin or whatever you're going to be wiring, most likely a cabin or a shed or a garage or something like that, you're going to want to put a circuit panel in. And I suggest you get one with like, will handle 12 breakers. They're not expensive. I think this panel right here was like $14 or $15. That's it. So they're really not that expensive. And Murray brand right here are very inexpensive on the breakers. You can buy breakers from Murray's. Would be like that 20 amp breaker right there would be, oh, I don't know, $6 or $7. Last time I bought them, they might be $13 now. Who knows? But yeah, they're cheap. 20 amp would be for all of your electrical outlets, and 15 amp, it'll say it right on there, 15 or 20. 15 amp would be for lighting if you're going to have your lighting in 120 volts. All right. Now for your house, you're not working on commercial, you're working on residential. For the 15 amp breaker, you can use 14 gauge wire, but for 20 amp, you got to use 12 gauge wire. And I have some wire here. This is Romex. This is called Romex, and this is 14.2. So this would be good for lighting. Okay, there's just one black, one white, and one ground. That's all that's in there. They call it 14.2 because you don't count the ground wire in the setup. Okay, now here is 12.2. You got one black, one white, and one ground wire. Now they also make both of those in either 14.3 or 12.3. And that's a little bit more complicated, but that's what you would use if you're going to put a three-way switch in, where you can come in one door in one side of the room and flip a switch on, and then you can go out another door on the other side of the room and flip the switch off. Okay, and three-way switches are very simple. Anybody that needs to know how to hook one of those up, leave me a question or comment down below, and I'll be glad to show you exactly how that works. They're so simple, it's amazing. And speaking of stuff like that, you might want to also check out my playlists. There's one playlist named Electrical Experiments and Such. Electrical Experiments and Such. And there's some pretty interesting stuff in there, especially the one named or titled, Not All LED Bulbs Are Created Equal. Okay, that might really interest you, because you can buy a certain brand of LED bulbs that are designed for the 120 volt circuits, but they'll also work on DC circuits. For I can light one, and you'll see it in the video. I can light one with a 9 volt radio battery. Okay, there's one of those little square batteries that goes in a radio. All right, so check that out. Next, this kit will come also with this bar right here, and this is your main ground wire. So the big heavy-duty ground that comes in, if it were coming off of a grid power, would clamp onto there with a clamp. All right, I mean, they call it a lug, but you would slip a lug over the end of it, put your wire in there, and tighten it down. Okay, now, very important when you're putting wiring in this stuff is you want to make sure your neutrals are tight. Neutrals will tend to vibrate loose, and a loose neutral will cause the wire to burn out and break, and then you say, well, I don't have power in that circuit anymore. What's going on? 9 out of 10 times it's a burnt neutral. So just make sure you don't use a Phillips screwdriver on these. These can use square drive, but I like using a regular flat blade screwdriver, like one of these, and they will fit in a slot on there, and use those for tightening your wires down. You'll make sure you get a nice tight wire that way. All right, same thing with the lugs. You want to make sure the lugs are tight. All right, next, for most of you that are going to be moving off grid, you're going to be moving out into the wild, the desert, or the forests, or the mountains, or the hills, whatever. One of your biggest enemies out there for your electrical wiring is going to be critters, mice and rats. They will get in there and chew the plastic coating on Romex, because the plastic apparently on these, I read one time, the plastic on these is one molecule off from being margarine. That's why animals are attracted to eating it. Okay, and that's why I don't eat margarine. So anyway, so in that case, the last thing you want to use is Romex, either the 12 or the 14. Why? Because the critters will chew through it, and you'll end up having to trace down the short. You'll find a little electrocuted critter, and you'll find out that you need to replace a big section of wire. And who wants to go crawling under houses and through attics and stuff like that? So what's your other options? Your other options is using either plastic conduit, which again the critters will chew through. So if you're going to use plastic conduit, I suggest you use it for burial underground, and do not put Romex inside of conduit. That's not allowed, because it gets too hot and it'll burn itself out inside the conduit. Now this is 1/2-inch plastic conduit, or PVC conduit. That connector on the end here is a 45 degree. Okay, this connector is a 90 degree. This is in 3/4 size. This is in a 1/2-inch size. Those are great for if you're going to run something from the cabin out to a shed underground. You would use those. But you have to use, with that, you have to use wire called THHN solid, which would be something like this. It comes on spools. So you'd have to buy one color, one white, and one green. I don't have any greens up here because I've used them all. But you could use any color for that circuit, and that'll identify that one circuit. You don't have to use black. For multi-circuits, when you're going to have a bunch of circuits, it's best to use different colored wires for different circuits. That way, if you ever have to trace down a problem, you say, okay, well, it's the red circuit that's having a problem. Well, all you have to do is go from box to box and check out the red wires. You don't have to meter them all out and find out which wire is the one that you're tracing. All right, just a little trick. All right, so what's the best option for off-grid? This is what I used in my cabin. This is called MC cable, metal clad cable. It's got its own metal conduit. It's flexible, so you can bend it around corners and go through holes in the studs in the walls and that stuff. And this is, let's see, that's 12, okay. So this is 12-2. One black, one white, one green. All right, so if this was going into this panel, and you would use a connector like this, going into one of these 1/2-inch holes right there, and then these wires would go through that unit and stick out this side into the inside of the box. So then you would take your green wire, and always when you're hooking up electrical circuits, always do the ground first. That way, if somehow the circuit gets charged, it's got another ground to go to instead of just you. But you can wear leather gloves, like I said. As you get down the line, you'll quit using the leather gloves and say, they just get in my way. But the green would go to the ground bar down there, okay? Your white, hook that up second. Let me see if I can get one separated here. And that would go to your neutral bar. Okay, any one of the ones here. I like to start them at one end and then work them through there. Okay, black. Black would go into the breaker screw right there when the breaker is installed. So your black would go into that screw hole right there. All right, it's that simple. And then at the other end of the electrical box, you would have a where it goes into an outlet. You would have an electrical outlet, and see if I got one over here in my electrical bin. Yeah, I got some here. All right, well, this is an ungrounded one. That's an old fashioned. I keep some of these around. I can use these for DC. And the reason I can use these for DC is because they don't have a ground in them. So this would be hot and ground here, red and black. And if I look at the outlet and I see that it doesn't have the ground hole in it like that, I know right off the bat that that's a DC outlet. All right, let's get to well, let's see, I can't pull the plugs out with one hand. So we'll do this. This is a GFCI. That stands for Ground Fault Circuit Interrupter. And you would use these in bathrooms or anywhere within 3 feet of water. Bathroom, kitchen sink, things like that. And these are built so that with a 1/2 volt variance in the circuit, this little breaker built right into it will go click and pop. And there'll be no power coming out of there. That's in case you have your hair dryer plugged in and you drop it in the sink or the tub, you won't get electrocuted. Okay, so remember, GFCI within 3 feet of water. Kitchen sink, bathtub, bathroom sink, so forth, so on. Okay, and you don't want to put these any lower than 12 inches off the floor. And as you get older, you'll like that idea, but you'll even wish that you would put them up there at 16 inches off the floor. Now, outside, they have to be 24 inches off the ground. That's so if there's a flood, it doesn't go into your electrical. All right, so that's just a little explanation there. Remember I told you about DC breakers. This has one wire here and one wire here, and it's usually the same color. So you'd have the black coming in here and a black going out there to your other item. This button pops the breaker. This one resets it. This is 100 amp. I don't need 100 amp on what I'm working with out here, so I just had this and I put it on my shelf in case I ever do need it. All right. So that being said, you would also get these connectors like this, where you can put 2 wires. It would have 2 of these little supports right there. I think I took that one out because I needed it on another connector. But yeah, you could have 2 MC cables coming in here, and then the wires all come out there and go into the box. So if you don't have enough holes in here for all the circuits you want, you can use 1 hole for 2 circuits. All right, little tricks of the trade. All right, that's about it. These covers, they go into those in between those 2 little nubs down there on each side, like that, and drop it in place. And then you put your 2 screws in down here. The screws are actually in there under it right now, and that covers your panel for safety, so little kids don't run over and put their hands in there. All right, any questions on this, comments down below? I'll be glad to get back to you. I could do a short video on a specific item if you need to know more about it. Okay, this is the stuff that comes with one of these panels. It's got this main hub cover right there that would cover that big hole, because that big hole is for grid tie. That's if you had power come in from the telephone pole coming into your panel, it would come in through there, through a conduit. If you're not going to use it because you're doing off-grid, you would put this square plastic cover there. The label here is so that you can stick the label on the box right here and label what breaker goes to what circuit. It's that simple. And trust me, do that while you're setting up each circuit. As soon as you connect it, write it down on that little piece of paper, and you'll be happy you did that, so you don't have to trace everything out down the line. All right, there's a lot of information on the labels of these things. Anybody wants to know more about that, let me know. This is a rainproof box, so it can be used outdoors. They make them for indoor and outdoor. I have mine indoors, and I put it behind my refrigerator, which isn't totally kosher, but it's very simple because my refrigerator is on wheels, so I can just slide it out anytime and reach a breaker if I need to. All right, that's it, everybody. Going to move on down the line. It looks like we're going to get into the next phase, or the next segment of moving off grid and things you need. I think I'm going to go into water for the next segment. So join me for that. Tomorrow, if the weather is nice and we don't have winds and I can go up on a ladder, I've got a product that was sent to me that I need to review, and I will get that installed, and we will review it tomorrow. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget thumbs ups. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and save. G Bear signing off.